Kia ora, everybody. I am Ben.
I'm Nathan. We are one half of Z. Today we are going to be...
We're going to be talking to you about a little song that was written in the 90s by a Z, and it's called Renegade Fighter.
3, 4.
So we started music, I think, together. I would have been 13, you would have been 15, singing in barbershop quartets. There was some pretty immediate chemistry with the two of us making music.
And probably songwriting was a big part of that. Quite quickly formed a musical friendship, but the songs started flowing quite early on, didn't they?
They did. Before we were Z, we called ourselves Nat and Benny.
Yes! Nat and Benny.
And it was beautifully cheesy. I was on piano and Nathan was singing, and we wrote these quite cool little songs.
Very melodic, eh?
Yeah,
Like
always
melody
melody.
was always
Yeah.
very important.
It was. And then we thought, no, we need to harden the sound up a little bit. We need a drummer.
Yeah.
And your mate Adrian
Yeah.
joined the band.
Yeah.
And he was a great drummer. It was a good fight. And I think the first release, Oh Daisy, I wrote that for my sixth form music assessment, which is that's not called forms anymore, isn't
Year
it? That's how
12.
old we are, year 12. It was a year 12 music assessment. And Cashmere High School had such a strong music department, and
Yeah.
the teachers there were really encouraging. The infrastructure for us to learn was fantastic. Glenn Common, who is the father of Rockquest, was my bass teacher for several years, and I mean, just wow. Without him, I don't know if I would have even picked up a bass guitar. So thank you, Glenn. You are a legend.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it too, that you taught him bass.
And I'm just being here. I'm a lover, I'm a winner, I'm a fighter. Come to set your soul on fire. I'm a lover, I'm a renegade fighter. Come to set your soul on fire.
Well, this is a Renegade Fighter, breaking it down a little bit. I think one thing that's really good to bear in mind when you're writing a song, often you'll be comparing what you're trying to do to songs you're hearing on Spotify, radio, whatever, which are fully produced, lots of layers, all the harmonies, everything all done and dusted. And you're sitting in your bedroom with, an instrument trying to come up with something, and it's not sounding anywhere near like where it could be. But don't let that put you off and get you down. Keep going, because a lot of those great songs obviously started real simple and pretty rough. And this is a good example of that. This song is very simple. What do we got? We've got an E major.
Yep.
It's in the key of E.
Good old classic E.
And then goes 27, which is kind of a little bit different. And then to like A minor 7,
Yep.
and then to a C, to a D. But we kind of slid that D up from the C, so that just kind of gave it a little bit of a something different, which is nice.
And that's most of the
Most
song.
of the song.
And then it was about coming up with as many hooks as you can. And a lot of them were lead guitar based. And I think, probably one of the most recognizable from this track is the stabs on the set of the D.
Yeah.
You know,
With a bunch of distortion on it.
yeah.
It's kind of cool.
And we started that track with a little keyboard line.
From an old Roland groove box
I was going to attempt to play it, but I don't think I can actually.
on guitar.
And then the guitars come in with that grungy hook.
And I guess in terms of drama, that's sort of part of what we aimed to do was it starts nice and like those little tinkly little bells. It's all very mellow. And then there was some angry guitars came in, which kind of pulled the rug out a little bit.
Punch in the face, and then it pulls back to just a cool little groove around those chords. Andy does like an arpeggio sort of guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's it exactly
Well,
it, but
Yeah. So
I think we often used dynamics for impact
yeah.
back in those early days. A quieter verse, and it was all about trying to make a big chorus full of hooks.
Yeah.
One of the tricks in doing that is lifting the range or the pitch of the vocal.
Yeah, which this song certainly does. So because
Yeah.
it starts down where you are.
Can I? And I've got a lower voice than Nathan, which is probably why I ended up singing the verses, and then Nathan kicks in for the chorus, which
Yeah.
gives it.
Then I'm up here, so it almost.
way too high for me.
Yeah. Gonna set your soul on fire. So it's, we're probably octave jump almost. Yeah, I think I remember trying the verse and it just didn't suit my voice as well as yours. So it was
Yeah.
quite nice to mix that up. You take the lead in the in the verses, and I'm jumping on the choruses.
That very first vocal line, we cut the band, the drums, the guitars, everything.
That's right.
So that the very first words that you hear grab you and pull you into the song. Well, at least that's the intention behind that little trick. I like to refer to Adrian as a melodic drummer, which doesn't actually make sense, but he comes up with these hooks with his riffs, and he had a great one in this where he does this triplet, which signals choruses and bits and pieces.
And it's quite unique to that song.
So we get to the chorus, we go from the palm muted sort of guitars, and we just go full guitar, full noise. The bass goes from sitting up the octave, pedaling right down to the low E.
Open it right up.
Just to try and get this. We've brought the dynamics of the song here, and then we want it to go like this for the chorus.
And big and wide.
Kind of.
I'm a lover, I'm a sinner, I'm a fighter. Gonna set your soul on fire. I'm a lover, I'm a renegade fighter. Gonna set your soul on fire.
It was early days songwriting for me, and you use what you've got, and I'd learned a few chords, so I used them. I remember the concept was I was just wanting to get out the idea of being passionate about something and wanting to express yourself in some way, but with a positive energy to it. I really can't get into specifics about what the song is actually focused on necessarily, because I think it can be interpreted in a number of different ways. And what's been really cool is that over the years, lots of people have come up to me and been really encouraged by the song and what it means for them. And I think it's great to leave it that way as well, just to let it speak to people in different ways. But at the same time, I think there's probably like quite a bit of depth there. If I was to sit down with a psychologist and unpack it, it would probably take me places I didn't even realize.
Songwriting is a good form of therapy. And I think this song in particular is probably one of the more simple songs that we've worked on, isn't it? Like the verse melody is very simple, the chorus melody is simple, almost nursery rhymish.
Very repetitive kind of melodically.
And I think often it's overlooked how difficult it is to write simple songs. Did an exercise for our new album that's coming out to try and write a song around 2 chords, and I couldn't. I had to put some more chords in it, whereas Renegade Fighter it is around the same harmonic structure through most of the song, and then has this very nursery rhymish, repetitive, hooky chorus. It's an earworm and it gets in and you can't get it out.
And finding a way to create something that's simple but fresh at the same time is quite hard to do.
And we were writing to a formula at the time too. We'd studied pop music and the standard radio format for successful songs, where you'd have your chorus in before a minute, and you'd generally have a wee intro, and then you'd have your verse that lasted the right amount of time, and then that standard structure of your verse, chorus, middle eight, chorus, and a trick that we did a lot over the last chorus, putting another counter melody so that you're bringing in one last hook to drive it home. Developed a bit of a songwriting formula through that time that we stuck with. It just came to you in the shower, didn't it?
Yeah, I think literally. Apparently there's something to do with like water splashing this part of your head, stimulates your creative center in your brain. It was at that point that I came up with the middle eight, I remember, and I had to just keep singing it, to finish my shower and get out and then write it down. It was quite funny.
And we're particularly lucky that we have pretty much all of us are songwriters in the band, so we're able to help shape each other's ideas and develop them. Nick Manders was our engineer, who's the producer of our latest album, and the producer was David Nicholas, who was an Australian, and he'd worked with INXS and a bunch of other pretty amazing bands through the 80s and early 90s. And we recorded that to tape.
At a time where you needed to perform the song and get it right, and if you didn't get it right, you went again, and until you got it right.
At one stage on that album, I don't know if it was the song or not, producer Dave had to actually splice the tape together, because there was the first half of one drum take was just perfect, and the second half of another take was perfect, and he wanted to mix them together, so he had to actually
cut
the tape with a razor blade. And he had to get it so precise that when you joined it together with tape, like sellotape, and ran it through the reel, that you wouldn't hear that there'd been an edit made. And then we'd record over the top of that with the overdubs for the vocals and bits and pieces.
Scary moment.
It was a scary moment. all of the main tracks were being done in the main room, but then just out in like the kitchen of the studio or something, we set up another little rig where we had keyboards and percussion and a microphone, and we were out there ourselves just throwing ideas at that. And in that track, there's a lot of vocal malarkey happening in the background that you can't really hear. You know, even our drummer.
Involved, yeah. He's even in there yelling something. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
just to add some more energy to it. I think it was, sometimes it can be quite cool if something's pushing you musically in some way, shape or form. You can kind of harness that because you're striving for something and it can come out in the recording. And it added a little bit of energy where our drummer Age, he could only just hit the note that we were wanting to get, and it sounded great.
Yeah.
Even though
it didn't sound great, but we thought it sounded great because it was hilarious, making him scream at the top of his range. And we were, we love Adrian, and we love pushing them.
And I remember Andy coming up. He had a crazy little pedal called a Maestro, I think. That was from the 70s maybe, and it created a very distorted, with lots of harmonic overtones and things in it, guitar sound
to the second verse.
Yeah, and it can be great to mess with sounds that are a little peculiar at times to give a song flavour. I think in a lot of pop music, it's great to think outside the square sonically and put things together that you wouldn't normally do. Probably similar to fashion and other things where you collide things and then see what it creates. It can be, it can be quite wonderful.
We independently released 3 songs, and then we signed to Universal to make the album, and Renegade Fighter was the first single off that album. But when we presented that song to the label, they said, hey look, we love it. Only problem is it's radio will never play it, it's too heavy. They were wrong, because it took off at radio and kind of blew the album up. And when we look historically now at Zed, that's probably the song that we're most well known for, because it ended up being synced to TV commercials, and All Blacks used it. Occasionally, I have people messaging me from Australia saying, oh, we're at the cricket, or they're using the song when someone scores a try or hits a 6. We were in Rockquest, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we weren't Zed yet.
No, we were called Supra.
And a 3-piece. We didn't win. We got into the regional finals, didn't place, but it was such a big event for us.
Yeah.
Being able to play, through real amps on a big stage in front of...
Yeah, and it's a real trial by fire, isn't it? There's a lot of pressure. You've got very limited time to set up, get on stage and do your thing, but that process is really, actually it's reality, because if you're playing a big festival, I remember things like Big Day Out and lots of festivals we played where time is short and it has to be done real fast, so it's very real in many respects.
On, you plug in and you go.
Yeah. You might get a line check if you're lucky.
Music is a great career, and if you're passionate about it, you can do it. If you're really serious about music, then you have to devote a lot of time and energy to getting good at it.
Yeah, good at your craft, and always being open-minded and learning new skills as you go. And being handy on a variety of instruments can be really helpful. Certainly from a songwriting perspective, if you've got some skills on keys as well as, say, a guitar, then you've got automatically 2 options for writing with, which can open up different avenues to you and be really helpful.
And listen lots. Listen to all different styles: classical, opera, jazz, heavy metal, hip hop. There's influences in all of that can help build your sound.
The larger your repertoire, I think, of what you listen to, the more chance you're going to creatively come up with music that's interesting and diverse and has appeal in lots of ways, rather than being something necessarily a singular kind of wavelength. Yeah.
I'm a lover, I'm a winner, I'm a fighter.